It's late, and you walk into the kitchen. You pull the fridge door open and stand there in the cold light. You already know what's inside. You looked 20 minutes ago. Nothing has arrived since then. You close the door. Then, a little while later, you open it again. You're not confused. You're not even especially hungry. Some part of you understands that the shelves have not changed. And still, the door keeps opening, as if the answer might be different this time. Most people explain this with one word: boredom, or habit, or weak self-control. But the behavior is older than kitchens, older than doors, older than the idea of storing food at all. Here is the strangest part. Opening the fridge gives you nothing. No food, no information you didn't already have. By any sensible accounting, it's a wasted trip. But your brain doesn't run on sensible accounting. It runs on prediction. And to a system built on prediction, an empty fridge isn't a place with no food. It's a place with an uncertain amount of food. That difference sounds small enough to ignore. It is also old enough to have kept your ancestors alive. To understand why, look at what dopamine is actually doing. In the 1990s, the neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz recorded activity from dopamine neurons in monkeys as they received small rewards. Most people assumed those cells would fire for pleasure. A drop of juice, a burst of dopamine. That is not what happened. The neurons fired hardest when a reward arrived unexpectedly. Once the reward became predictable, the response faded and shifted backward in time, onto the signal that came before it. And when an expected reward failed to arrive, activity dropped below its normal level. Dopamine was not measuring how good the juice tasted. It was measuring the distance between what was expected and what actually happened. Researchers call this a prediction error, which is a technical way of saying that your brain cares less about reward than about surprise. Later work pushed the idea further. When rewards were made deliberately unreliable, dopamine neurons responded to the uncertainty itself. A guaranteed reward produced little sustained activity. So did an impossible one. The signal climbed highest when the outcome sat somewhere in the middle. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe is what the system is tuned for. There is one more separation worth knowing. The neuroscientist Kent Berridge spent years pulling apart two things most people treat as one thing: wanting something and enjoying it. Animals with disrupted dopamine still showed the facial signs of pleasure when something sweet touched the tongue. What they lost was the drive to go and get it. Wanting and liking run on different machinery. Dopamine mostly serves the wanting, which means the door in your kitchen was never really about food. You don't open it because you expect to enjoy something. You open it because something inside you is still asking whether something might be there. Now go backwards. 100,000 years ago, there was no fridge. There was a patch of berries across the valley, a shellfish bed exposed at low tide, a tree that fruited last season. None of them were reliable. All of them changed. Return too rarely and the food is gone. Return too often and the day is wasted. So your ancestors carried a rule that needed no thought at all. When a check is cheap, check anyway. Your fridge costs you a few steps in a few seconds. Your primitive brain has no idea that it isn't a berry patch. Behavioral ecologists study this with foraging models. In 1976, Eric Charnoff described how an animal should decide when a food patch is no longer worth staying in. The mathematics get complicated. The pressure behind them does not. In a changing world, an animal that samples its food sources often, at almost no cost, tends to eat more than an animal that waits for certainty. Your ancestors did not check because they were hungry. They checked because checking was cheap and the world kept moving. And here is what keeps the loop alive in a modern kitchen. Sometimes the fridge pays out. A forgotten yogurt, leftovers someone brought home, something behind the milk that you had stopped seeing. The reward is rare, unpredictable, and unearned, which happens to be the exact condition that makes a behavior hardest to extinguish. Psychologists showed decades ago that rewards delivered on an unpredictable schedule produce far more persistent behavior than rewards delivered every single time. Your kitchen quietly runs that schedule on you, and because you are also the person who restocks the shelves, the patch really does replenish, just never on the schedule your brain assumes. It's worth being honest about the limits here. Nobody has run a controlled experiment on fridge doors. These systems were studied in juice, in lever presses, and in animals searching real landscapes. Connecting that evidence to your kitchen is an interpretation rather than a measured fact. But the shape of the behavior fits the shape of the machinery unusually well. Watch how far the pattern travels. You open the fridge. You close it. Then, without deciding to, you pick up your phone and pull the screen down to refresh a feed you refreshed 4 minutes ago. Same gesture, same question. Is there something new? The fridge is simply that question with a handle and a light inside. If you enjoy understanding the hidden logic behind your own behavior, subscribe to Primitive Brain. The cost of this ancient system is easy to miss because every individual check is so small. A forager who returned to a patch too often lost daylight. What you lose is harder to see. The seeking system doesn't wake up only when you're hungry. It wakes up when you're bored, restless, uncomfortable, or avoiding a problem you would rather not sit with. Searching is what it knows how to offer, so searching is what it offers, and the kitchen is a few steps away. Understanding that doesn't make the impulse disappear. It changes what you do with it. When the door opens for the third time in an hour, the useful question is not what's in the fridge. You already know. The useful question is what you were actually searching for and whether it was ever going to be on those shelves. Uncertainty is the fuel. Attention is the price. So the next time you find yourself standing in that cold light looking at shelves you memorized 20 minutes ago, notice what you're really doing. You're not weak. You're not even looking for food. You're checking a patch. And behind your eyes, an old impatient system that once kept your family alive is still waiting to be surprised.